When I started longboarding, I didn't pay too much attention to the takeoff, but as I've been progressing, I've come to realize it's one of the most important aspects to longboard surfing. In this video, I'm going to share with you the 3 most important takeoffs that I use, how to execute them, and I'll also share some of the more basic techniques just in case you're a new surfer. The main goal for most longboarders is to nose ride, and if you've watched this channel at all, you know it's obviously my main goal. In order to nose ride, we have to be in the most critical section of the wave, which is normally right in front of the portion that's breaking. Deciding which of these 3 takeoffs you're going to execute depends on how far or how close you are to the breaking section. Now real fast, before we get into the 3 methods, let's just go over some of the basics just in case you're a new surfer. Number 1, as you're paddling into the wave, make sure your feet aren't dragging in the water. Either have them in the air or just have them on your board. Number 2, make sure when you're popping up that your hands are on the board and not grabbing the rail. Number 3, make sure you have your pop-up well drilled. This is something you could practice at home, and you should be doing it every day if you struggle popping up. When you're taking off, you shouldn't even have to think about the pop-up. Number 4, and most important, never look at your board. Looking at your board during the takeoff is one of the most common mistakes I see new surfers make. Your eyes need to be laser focused looking down the line. If you're not looking at the wave when you're taking off, you'll have no idea which of these 3 takeoffs to actually use. So let's get into the first 2 takeoff methods, and then we'll finish with my favorite method and the one that I use the most. But I do use all 3 of these takeoffs just about every session. Number 1 is the late takeoff. This is the method that you'll use if you find yourself behind the peak and you need to get as much speed down the line as you can right off the bat. You'll often see longboarders use this method and then run straight to the nose because they're already in a critical section. This is also an excellent method to use if you're a new surfer because it really helps keep you high up on the wave. Most new surfers struggle with angling their takeoff, and using this method really exaggerates doing this. We're going to use this wave as a base to determine which takeoff I would use in different situations. If I was positioned right here, I would utilize the late takeoff. To execute this takeoff, you have to be paddling your board at quite an extreme angle down the line. Decide which direction you're going to be going and then angle your board in that direction. When I say angle your board, angle it dramatically. If you would normally use like a 45-degree angle on a normal wave, make this one a 60 or 70-degree angle. Now here's the trick. Once you feel like you have enough speed and you've actually caught the wave, pop up, but don't drop in. Keep that rail locked extremely high on the wave. After this, you can decide if you're going to cross step real fast to the nose or just grab rail and enjoy the ride. Number 2, I'm going to call this one the regular takeoff. When you find yourself in the perfect position is when you would use the regular takeoff. You don't need any extra speed from the late takeoff, and you're not too far ahead of the pocket where the wave just isn't powerful enough to get any speed. For this method and the next method, we're going to be introducing a bottom turn, which adds a little bit more difficulty, but this is also when longboard surfing really comes alive. For the late takeoff, I never really talked about where your feet are positioned because it doesn't really matter. You can do a late takeoff towards the front of your board, or you could do it towards the back of your board. But for the next 2 takeoffs, your feet positioning is very important, and I'll explain why in just a second. For the regular takeoff, you could either have your board angled straight towards the beach, or you can have it at about a 45-degree angle. This will depend entirely on where the steep section of the wave is. If you feel like a 45-degree angle is going to give you too much speed and you might outrun the wave, then opt for a more straight takeoff. If you're going for the 45-degree takeoff, you should have your feet positioned towards the back of the board, but they don't need to be all the way back. You still have plenty of turning power even if your back foot is still 2 feet away from the end of the board. However, if you opt to start with a straight board, you're going to want to get that back foot as close to over the fin as you can get it because you're going to have to execute a more dramatic turn to get yourself moving down the line. First thing you have to do is determine which direction you're going on the wave and then decide if you're going to be angling the board a bit or just going straight. Once you feel the power of the wave and you think you can pop up, hold it for just a second. Since we're going to be performing a bottom turn, we need speed, and I find it better to build up this speed while you're still on your stomach rather than hope you have enough speed while you're on your feet. It's best to get to the point where when you pop up, you're already starting your bottom turn rather than just standing there in no man's land and waiting for the wave to build. After you pop up, start your turn as you're traveling down the face of the wave. Now to execute the turn, shift about 70% of your weight to your back foot, look where you want to go, open up your shoulders in the direction you're turning, and magically, the board will just start to turn. This is a bit easier to do on frontside waves as opposed to backside waves, but here's a couple tips that could help. Make sure your feet are fairly close together as it makes it easier to shift your weight from foot to foot. Also, experiment with placing your back foot closer to the inside rail. This can really help whip the board around even faster. And finally, takeoff number 3, the faded takeoff. This is by far my favorite takeoff method as it really helps you find the critical sections and has led to many more noserides. This is the method you would use if you're too far ahead of the critical section and you kind of just gotta waste a little bit of time to let the wave build. First thing you do for a faded takeoff is you paddle in the opposite direction you plan on surfing the wave. This is gonna feel very strange the first time you do it, but you'll quickly realize how exciting it is. Once you feel the power of the wave, once again, don't pop up. This is especially important on a faded takeoff, and there's 2 reasons for this. First, you're killing time while the wave builds up. Pop up and turn too soon, and you'll find yourself way too far ahead of the critical section. Number 2, you're building up speed, and you need plenty of speed to do a proper faded takeoff. While you're waiting in this position, you're basically surfing with your hands. You can turn the board, you can push down on the board to gain speed, and you're doing all of this with your hands. Right before you pop up, push down on the board to ride down the face a little bit, because this makes popping up with your feet farther back so much easier. One tip that helps is to put your back foot towards the back of the board while you're catching the wave, and don't move it during the whole pop-up process. This basically forces you to pop up with your feet way back on the board. After you pop up, you do the same thing as a regular takeoff. Look where you want to go, shift most of your weight to your back foot, open up those shoulders, and poof, you've done a faded takeoff. Popping up with your feet farther back on the board has way more benefits than just quicker turns, and I explain all of that in this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see everyone next Thursday.